Welcome to Pass the Outlet, episode 39. I'm your host, Michael Benjamin, joined as always by my wingman, Chris Patrick. Chris, it's the Alamo versus the Big Apple. How are you feeling tonight, man?
Honestly, I am feeling great. Just happy that the Thunder aren't in it. I think I speak for everyone outside of Oklahoma, possibly the rest of the world, when I say, thank God we are not going to get back-to-back champions. It's going to be, I think what they say, the 8th or 9th season in a row where we're going to have a new champion crowned, guaranteed. So a lot of exciting things to get into with this matchup. But Mike, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I think the metrics came in. This is the most viewed NBA playoffs in the past 28 years. And it all comes down to this. But of course, here on Pass the Outlet, we break down the beautiful game of basketball. And tonight, the 2026 NBA Finals are less than 24 hours away. Steph Curry goes global with Li-Ning, and Devin Booker just continues to immerse himself into Arizona lore. It's lovely to see. But as always, Chris brings us the news from around the net. And on the outlet point guard, we'll look back at a man with more nicknames than you probably ever realized. But if you're here with us live, watching the playback on Valley Sports Plug YouTube, or listening on podcast streaming services, you know we love y'all. Make sure you subscribe to the VSP YouTube channel, leave a like on this video, and click that notification bell so you can stay up to date with everything going on here at Valley Sports Plug. But Chris, let's get into it. The NBA Finals countdown is almost complete, but I want to go back, and let's go back to 1998. The Chicago Bulls had just secured their second three-peat, and the NBA was actually heading into a lockout. But it eventually shortened the 1998-1999 season to 50 games, and the Spurs, they recovered from a 6-8 start to win 31 of their last 36 games and were the clear-cut top seed in the West. And during the postseason, the Spurs coasted to the finals, going 11-1 in the first 3 rounds. Because you got to remember, this was back when the first round was only 5 games. But the New York Knicks, they were a different story. New York was actually on the brink of not making the playoffs and barely qualified, taking the 8th seed. And the infamous shot from Allen Houston with 0.8 seconds left helped New York stun the top-seeded Miami Heat in the first round. But injuries started to take a toll. In round 2, Hall of Famer Patrick Ewing, towards the end of his career, was lost for the rest of the postseason. Larry Johnson sprained his MCL in Game 6 of the East Finals, and the Knicks limped into the 1999 NBA Finals. And they just could not get over the hump and overcome the twin towers of Tim Duncan and David Robinson, losing the series 4-1 with Tim Duncan winning his first MVP of the NBA Finals. And we have to ask ourselves, will it be the same story almost 3 decades later? I don't know, Chris. Let's get back to the present, though, as Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, and the young San Antonio Spurs look to continue a legacy of winning by making their own marks against Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, and the New York Knicks in the 2026 NBA Finals. We know Game 1 tips off tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Right now, the Spurs are favored on the books, minus 210 to the Knicks plus 170. But Chris, I'm here to pass the outlet to you. Give us your initial breakdown on the rematch, 27 years in the making.
Boy, oh boy, this is an exciting matchup. I think very intriguing from a standpoint of maybe not a lot of people expecting the Spurs to come out of the West. I think with a lot of the injuries in the East, there might not be as much surprise about the Knicks making it. But when I look at this matchup, I like that all the game times are nice and uniform, right? 8:30 start all the way through. I see this one going 7, honestly. I think this is going to be a battle. I think it's going to come down to who can make the most adjustments. There's exciting young players on both sides. And in a lot of ways, this is kind of indicative of the changing of the guard that we're starting to see in the league, especially as it pertains to the superstars. Because if you think about it, there aren't any like old, like even from the last like 5 to 10 years, there aren't any like superstars from that time period. Wemby is now stepping into becoming the face of the league. Jalen Brunson and Cat are stars in their own right. And man, I'm very excited. Of course, with the Valley ties, and we may talk about it some more, but Mikal Bridges right there on the graphic. Gotta be rooting for the Knicks to some capacity. I had a coworker ask me today who I would be rooting for, and kind of as I think we mentioned it on well, maybe we didn't, but because of the generational trauma, I think as you put it, Mike, we can't be rooting for the Spurs out here. Once they got out of the Western Conference Finals, they beat the Thunder. We're cutting those ties. We're no longer friends with the Spurs, and they got to go. But man, honestly, like, I don't know, maybe it's because this current iteration of the Spurs hasn't done anything to the Suns to make me hate them, but like there are a lot of likable players on this Spurs team in a lot of ways, from both their game and just the people they are. Like Wemby, you got De'Aaron Fox here, Stephon Castle, even the support players like Julian Champagnie, Keon Johnson. Like there are a lot of players, Devin Vassell, like, I mean, man, like they got some weapons, and both rosters are honestly pretty deep. I think this is going to be a really exciting matchup. And like I said, I see it going 7 games.
I love it. And Chris, I love that you brought up the Phoenix angle. So let's start right there. It's evenly matched up in the split, but obviously there's 2 guys that are actual contributors right now for their team in the New York Knicks when you talk about Mikal Bridges and Landry Shamet. But yes, you got old man Bismack Biyombo and Mason Plumlee over on the San Antonio Spurs side, who are there for more of a veteran presence with this young team. I mean, oh my goodness, when you talk about Wemby, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper, all those guys are under 22 years old. And I can't remember, one of them can't drink yet because they're only 20 years old. I think it's Dylan Harper because he was the rookie. But when I look at this matchup, Chris, this is a really tasty one. And I love where the New York Knicks are sitting right now with all the momentum in the world, even though they've been sitting, right? That's can bode the age-old question. Is it rest versus rust? But the Knicks have won 11 in a row. And there was a scare that I thought could have swayed the series even further than the San Antonio Spurs being the favorites right now with Mitchell Robinson and his finger injury. But it sounds like he's going to play. So that's going to help add a physical presence around the basket to control the height discrepancies. But we still know it's there. But these young guys for the San Antonio Spurs, these physical wings, they really can shoot the ball, man. You talk about Dylan Harper, Julian Champagnie, even guys like, my goodness, Keldon Johnson can be a marksman from time to time, the 6th man of the year. But the New York Knicks got their own guys too. We already talked about the Landry Shamet renaissance. He's shooting over 90% in the Eastern Conference Finals, just a sight to behold. But there's just some main things that I'm watching in this series specifically. Can the Spurs offensive studs be controlled by some of the best wing defenders in the league? When you talk about Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges, you know that Jalen Brunson is a superstar and he's going to find a way to make his mark. But what does that mean for Wemby as well? Are you going to have guys like OG Anunoby guarding him, maintaining low leverage, trying to get him off his spots? But man, before we get way too further into matchups talk, I'll pass it back to you, Chris. What's the one matchup or guys that you just need to see go one-on-one against each other? What's got you licking your lips?
Yeah, man, I think for me and probably most people, the most intriguing matchup to me is Wemby and Karl Anthony Towns. I know, like you mentioned, Mitchell Robinson's going to help out. He's going to get some minutes, but really, I think the brunt of the defensive responsibility is going to come down to Cat, and also Wemby guarding Karl Anthony Towns and how that'll affect his game. I mean, I don't think it's going to be quite like what we saw with him and Chet Holmgren, where in that game 7, Chet, like, I think he lost all confidence. And I saw someone compare it to Ben Simmons. Like, we might never see Chet be the same again after that. Now, I think that's pretty dramatic, but I could see Wemby having that effect on people because you don't go against guys like him every day. And I don't think there's anybody in this league who's gone against a player like him since maybe Yao Ming. And even then, on a skill level, Yao was big and imposing, but he didn't have the touch and the agility really that Wemby does. It's a generational player in both size and skill. So for me, I mean, you even touched on it a bit, Mike. The sports books are favoring the Spurs. If you look at the favorites for Finals MVP right now, it is Wembanyama minus 165. Shortly thereafter, you got Brunson plus 195, and then the next closest player outside of those two guys is Karl Anthony Towns. And you know what it is? It's plus 2,200. So it is an intriguing matchup. I think as skilled as Cat is and as important as he is to the Knicks, I think Wemby is probably the better player, and that could be because of size. You can't teach size, but that's, I think, what is going to be make or break for the Knicks is how they can control Wemby and if Karl Anthony Towns can hold his own to any capacity.
I'm going to double down on it, but there's another matchup that I don't know if it's specifically they're going to be going one-on-one. There might be sometimes, but I'm looking at the two main guys coming off the bench for each of these teams. When you talk about Dylan Harper and now Landry Shamet, Chris, like he has cemented himself as a true contributor for this Knicks team. It's really just a sight to behold, but Dylan Harper has been an absolute stud in his first time in the playoffs. I mean, it's a first time for a lot of these guys when you talk about Castle and Wemby, even Devin Vassell, who's been there for 5+ years. But Dylan Harper, his game 7, I think was so crucial for them going on the road, him stepping up to the moment and being so crafty with the basketball and creating those kind of shots. That's another guy where you have to look at it, and we've talked about it too. Man, the future is bright, unfortunately for some of us, when we think about it for the San Antonio Spurs, where they have hit on all of their draft picks, and all of these guys seem ready for the moment right now already. But through the playoffs, Dylan Harper, 13.1 points, 5.3 rebounds. I'm very interested to see if Landry Shamet can keep the same control, just because there's going to be a lot more just youthfulness coming at him and attacking him on the outside. So we'll have to see if he can continue to stroke it like he has been. But like I said, I need to double down too, Chris. I truly do think that this is all going to come down on what Karl Anthony Towns does overall, because I think there's going to be some, just matchups that really kind of cancel each other out. Like I talked about the young guards meeting up with some of the best wing defenders. Jalen Brunson can knock out Wemby's production, even though they play two different positions as far as from a scoring standpoint. But if Karl Anthony Towns averages 20+ points, 12 rebounds, man, he's even passing the ball great right now too, Chris. 5.9 assists in the playoffs so far. If he takes the challenge at some points, taking on Wembanyama and plays him physically, defensively, and he contributes as that second fiddle to Jalen Brunson, I think the New York Knicks are going to really have a shot in this series, Chris. But we know, like we said, minus 24 hours until game 1. I know a lot of people have been getting their information and doing their prep work before this series. So we got a lot on the docket for the rest of tonight. But I'd be remiss if we didn't do our NBA Finals predictions, Chris. So I'm going to pass it over to you first. Who do you got winning the 2026 NBA Finals?
All right, man. This is something I've thought about, and this is always tough when I'm asked these questions and we have these marquee matchups. Is do I predict with my heart or do I predict with my head? And I think that's a fine line because you can be swayed either way. I think what's interesting about both of these teams is they utilize their bench a lot more than sometimes teams on a finals run will. We've seen a lot of times in recent history where coaches will go to like a 7 or 8 man rotation, sometimes even like as many as like just 6, and just have them play in like the full 48. You can't really do that with Wemby. He was on a load management of like 30 minutes a game all season, but they've stretched him a little bit in this playoff run. But man, I think looking at some of these past couple games, like Spurs kind of unloading the bench, they're more going starter heavy, but the Knicks, they're going like 9 deep, and they're playing their bench guys nearly 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. But also they've also been pouring in a lot of points and had a lot of blowouts during this playoff run. So I don't know. You mentioned the rest versus rust as well. I think Knicks are going to be coming in well rested on a high of sweeping the Cavaliers, having some high scoring blowouts in that series as well. But the Spurs obviously are carrying momentum from beating the reigning champions and back-to-back MVP and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm a little bit kind of stalling here as I try and decide on which way I'm going to lean here, man. But if I'm going to be honest with you, I do still think, for me, I truly believe in, to some extent, playoff experience and maturity. And the Spurs are just like an extremely young team with a younger head coach. Now, it wasn't Mitch Johnson. He's done an incredible job coming up through that Spurs organization and being the G League coach with the organization for like 10 years. Being the successor to Pop is no easy task, especially when he's still in and around the team. I think it was famously after game 2 or 3 of the last series, he came in and read them the riot act and chewed everyone's asses out. And so I don't want to say he was undermined. It doesn't seem like he has any problem with that. I'm sure he was mentored by Pop to some extent. But what Mike Brown has done with this Knicks team that already had a lot of cohesion, playing together and playoff experience together, I think they're ready to get over that hump. And with that playoff experience and maturity, I'm gonna go with the Knicks in 7, Mike.
Chris, I absolutely love it. I also love that you brought up the aspect of Mike Brown because, there were some people who were rioting when the Knicks decided to go in a different direction from Tom Thibodeau last year, who had created some great playoff success in this new era of New York Knicks basketball. But Mike Brown has really got this team bought in. And I think you keyed on another great thing too, that really, when I think of the aspects of great basketball and teams getting over the hump, is being together, having that continuity, and fighting through adversity multiple times to get to the mountaintop. And this is the epitome of this New York Knicks team. I mean, they were struggling throughout this season, but then they found a way to all get on the same page. Contributions from new guys, Miles McBride, trading for Jose Alvarado, Mitchell Robinson being that great second defender outside of Karl Anthony Towns. And we know Jalen Brunson has continued to capitalize on his game, creating himself into the superstar that we know nowadays. But this is such a great matchup because sometimes in these type of series, you go back to, well, who has the home court advantage? But the Spurs literally just proved that wrong. They bookended the Western Conference Finals by taking both of those games to win that series. This team is young, but this team is ready as well. And they have a bunch of veteran presence guys as well. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox had the injuries, but he seems like he's back into form. Even though guys aren't playing, it's great to have ex-champions like Harrison Barnes right there chirping, making sure guys are ready for the moment as well. I'm doing the same thing as you, Chris. I'm stalling for the ever-living hell out of it, because I just think this is a series that I don't want to end the same way that the last OKC Thunder San Antonio Spurs series was. What an absolute showing. It talks to the numbers that we're seeing in TV metrics. But here we go. The heart says Knicks in 7, Chris, but the head says Spurs in 6. But I'm going with the heart. There ain't no way I'm going with the San Antonio Spurs. No chance in hell. And I think you swayed me the most with really talking about the mountains and the struggles that this New York Knicks team has gone through over the past couple of years. And I really think they're primed to step out and take this one home. And New York is going to go crazy. Places are going to burn down. Cars are going to be tipped over. Street lights are going to be smashed. Electrical wires are going to be just causing havoc, man. I can't wait to see it. But Chris, before we move on, anything else, any last thoughts on the 2026 NBA Finals, which is hitting us tomorrow at 5:30 p.m.?
Yeah, Mike, I think my only like final thoughts on it and what I want to get out there is that this is honestly, despite what you think of either of these teams personally, this is great for the league. And the dichotomy between the two teams is great because you have the one of the largest markets, probably the second largest, if not the largest market in New York City, and maybe second only to Los Angeles. But the Knicks being in the finals is good for the league for exposure. There's a lot of Knicks fans, obviously in New York and on the East Coast and around the world. That's a brand and a franchise that commands respect in a lot of ways. And just New York is a culture in and of itself that people want to be a part of. And it's why it's one of the biggest tourist destinations in the world. And then I say the dichotomy because the Spurs are considered a small market team despite their success. You know, San Antonio, not a lot of tourism going on in San Antonio. Mike, I know you went to the Alamo. I think you said it was a good time, but is that a place you're trying to vacation to every year or you know, ever again? Really? Like, I mean, if you have family in that area, maybe you pop in every once in a while. That's a little bit different, but for all intents and purposes, San Antonio is a small market team. So you got a big market team, small market team, and it's just going to be great for the league. Two new teams that haven't been in the finals for a long time. I guess it's the first time they're matching up since 1998, 1999. But obviously we've seen the Spurs in the finals a lot in our lifetime, but not so much the Knicks. So I do think this is really good for the game. The only other thing I want to mention is the star power for New York. You know, we're going to see a lot of Timothy Chalamet, a lot of Ben Stiller. Those guys are going to be courtside. They're going to be on camera a lot. And I bet you, Mike, you're going to see them fly to San Antonio and be at those games too, heckling the crowd. I think Timmy and his girlfriend were at one of the Cavs games and they were booing him and he was getting into it. But man, it's going to be interesting. I know that was the last thing I said, but also, man, these ticket prices for the games in New York, you better get a second mortgage if you even can afford a mortgage in New York City, because those tickets are, I think the cheapest ticket I saw was $3,500.
Talk about it, Chris. Talk about it. So right now for game 3, the cheapest tickets on the market as of like 23 hours ago was $4,613. And then I think it was maybe $100 cheaper for game 4. But that's like up in the rafters. Guys are looking like ants on the court. If you wanted row 3 tickets for game 3, you're coughing up $141,000. Courtside was, I think, $181,000. Just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, they were basically saying, if you want to go to the NBA Finals and you're like a Knicks diehard, go to San Antonio. It's going to cost you cheaper to get a round trip flight out there, even from New York back, because the lowest tickets were $996 for game 1, $1,289 for game 2. But like I said the other day, Chris, aren't you thankful that we took advantage of going to game 1 of the NBA Finals? We only paid $200 to get into that stadium, and we had some decent tickets. They were in the upper deck, but they weren't way, way high, and it's an experience we can take back with us. Last couple of things I have to say. I like how you called Timothy Chalamet's girlfriend just his girlfriend, not Kylie Jenner, one of the most famous people in the world. And this is probably a hot take. I would go back to Houston every year before I would go back to San Antonio. And if you were to ask anybody from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they would say that I'm a crazy person. But that's just how I feel. I'm very excited for this series to kick off. I'm going to be keeping tabs every single second of the way, and you know we will too. But it's time to move on. And of course, like we said, we talk about everything basketball, and you know that means sneaker culture, the world of shoes. Here on Pass the Outlet, we dissected Stephen Curry when he went into his sneaker free agency, and it has finally come to an end as he signs a 10-year deal with the Chinese sports and the sportswear and sports athletics brand Li-Ning, who is from a previous Olympian from China, following his 13-year partnership with Under Armour. And the 10-year deal reports are that it will be worth at least $400 million. The partnership will include basketball products, shoes, obviously, athleisure lifewear style, a full golf line, Chris, and the ability for Curry to sign other athletes to his brand. We know that De'Aaron Fox had signed with Curry brand while he was with Under Armour, and I believe he's still signed with him. But man, there's already immediate plans to launch physical Curry brand stores in both the US and China as soon as they start getting the ball rolling on this. And it seems like the decision came from obviously a couple of different facets. He was testing models from his Golden State teammates, Jimmy Butler, and his good buddy and Hall of Famer, Dwayne Wade. He was impressed with the brand design, the innovation, and the performance capabilities. But Chris, this is kind of a shocker. I mean, I loved everything that Steph Curry was doing during his sneaker free agency, really tapping into every market. Adidas, his stuff with Kyrie, doing the old retros, some of his old stuff from when he was with Nike. But he ends up with Li-Ning in an absolute landmark deal for the sneaker community, Chris. What were your first initial thoughts when you heard the news about Steph Curry going global?
I honestly, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit. I'd say it's not surprising when they're going to throw $400 million, $40 million a year for this, and he's getting all the perks of the stores and the golf line and all this stuff. And I think as he nears retirement, he's going to start leaning into the golf thing more. I think he recently came out and said that he wants to be on the Pro-Am, or he wants to be on the PGA Tour, get his tour card, something like that. I don't know how good at golf he is. I imagine he's pretty good. A lot of these athletes are. But Mike, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that he made such a fuss about and a lot of hype about leaving Under Armour, to where people started to speculate which, American company. I guess, I don't know. Adidas isn't an American company, I guess. But if he was going to go to Nike, one of the big, shoe brands you do see here in America, which would be your Nike, your Adidas, your Reebok, things like that. Or if he would just try and start his own. And I think in some ways this is close to him starting his own, because he did get to retain his Curry brand. They're going to open up those Curry storefronts. But Mike, we even talked about this very recently. I don't know how, like, the decline of the Golden State Warrior fandom has been steep since they stopped being in the playoffs, making deep runs and winning championships. I don't really see a whole lot of Golden State Warrior fans. I think there are a lot of people who casually enjoy Steph Curry's game and have enjoyed watching him play and his ability to shoot threes, but he's not even the same player he used to be. He'll show us glimpses throughout the season where he'll drop 30 plus. He'll have a game with 5 or 6 3-pointers, maybe more. He had the famous moment in the last, I think it was the Paris Olympics, where he basically took over at the end of that game to secure the gold for us. But I don't know, Mike. I guess I want to ask you, like, do you think like the Curry brand is strong enough for all this to be opening physical locations? I mean, I think if you think about it from a global perspective, it kind of could make sense. But here at home, like, I don't know, man.
Here at home, I think it's going to struggle. I think you're right on the mark with that, Chris. Steph Curry is starting to decline a little bit from how he performs on the basketball court. We know that the Golden State Warriors have kind of struggled the past couple of years to get out of first rounds, or obviously even make the playoffs this year, as the Phoenix Suns beat them in the play-in tournament. But I think partnering with Li-Ning and their established brand overseas, specifically in China, is going to go a long way. Steph Curry is still a very marketable NBA player and has built a brand over almost 2 decades now with how long he's been in the league. This was basically the next evolution of where a superstar player can go if you're going to be a transcending brand, right? It never really made sense for him to go back to Nike, where he had started in the league. You knew he wasn't going to go to one of those heavy hitter companies like Adidas. Shoot, I don't even know. Riggerer, I don't think, has enough pull. Some of these other smaller outlets. Who's Kyrie with now? I always forget them. You got to remind me who he's with.
He is with Anta Sports.
Okay. So that might be comparable. I know Joker is with 361. Those overseas brands are continuing to kind of flood into the market of NBA, as the NBA is now a global game overall. But what Steph Curry is doing here is almost, I would say, to the next steps of what Tiger Woods did. Because Tiger was very loyal to Nike after everything happened. And I'm not saying that, this is just kind of like off to the side from a point that I'm trying to make with Steph Curry. But Tiger was so established, and he had his brand within Nike and his trademarks and his logos and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't his own entity until he went and created his own brand, which is Sunday Red, which is continuing to grow. It's still pretty new, but that's Tiger Woods. This is what Curry is trying to do with the backing of Li-Ning, because I don't think he would have enough of an established brand on his own, Chris, to open storefronts, to create his own brand, to front himself, basically to create and continue the Steph Curry brand as its own entity. So he's using the backing and the markets of Li-Ning, but it's really him establishing Curry brand as its own entity. So I think this makes the most sense for him. If there was anybody to try it right now, it would be Steph Curry, even though he is on the tail end of his career. But like you said, man, I'm very interested to see, they're not going to go and open 20 Curry brand stores, right? There's going to be one in Florida, one in LA, one in Golden State or San Francisco, probably one in New York. And it'll be open for a couple of years. And then I think as the market goes and he transitions out of the NBA, those storefronts are going to close. But I think the presence in China will continue to propel the brand forward, because the other thing with Li-Ning, Chris, is it's not new anymore. Like, they began making professional basketball shoes in 2004. And technically, the Cleveland Cavaliers guard Damon Jones was the first NBA player to ever wear a Chinese branded shoe. And that was back in 2006. Then they signed Dwayne Wade in 2012. And we know that their Way of Wade line is a staple. I have people that just absolutely swear by it, that it's the best basketball shoes that they've ever played in. And now they have kind of a litany of guys. We talked about Jimmy Butler. They got CJ McCollum, Fred VanVleet, D'Angelo Russell. But doesn't that kind of show where they're at too? Because aren't some of those guys washed up as well, or kind of on the decline, or the ending parts of this career? So I think this is a risk to a certain extent, but it's the smartest risk that Li-Ning could take, because if there was somebody that would be interested at that type of level, Steph Curry is the guy. So I am very intrigued to see where this goes and what he continues to build as he moves forward with this Curry brand. Last thing I'll say on that, Chris, before we get into the social swish, Steph Curry is a dog on the golf course, Chris. He's like a plus handicap. He's really good. So if there was somebody that were to transition from the NBA to the PGA and get his tour card, or at least exemptions, he's the guy, man. I swear, he's goated at multiple sports. It's crazy.
I totally believe it. I could see that. It seems like he's super into it. It like almost to like probably even right at J.R. Smith levels, who historically after his NBA career, I'm pretty sure wasn't he on like he went back to school and was on like the college golf team.
Yeah, he went back to like Jackson State University, some D3 college school, but was on the golf team. It was pretty good. Yeah, he can do it. He was supposed to be in that internet invitational that Barstool Sports did this last year, but I think something happened with his schedule or his flight. He couldn't make it.
Damn.
So they had to get a fill-in for him. But yeah, he can golf too.
As Mike, like I said, there is a clear basketball to golf pipeline, and we all fall into it eventually.
Ain't that the truth? But Chris, maybe there's some more shoes talk, because it's time to get into the social swish. I think I know what the first one is, but bring it to us, brother. What do you got for today?
Man, yes, Mike, this is the social swish, bringing you news from around the net. And yes, you are right. We got some more sneaker talk. I know a lot of people have probably already seen this, and there was a ton of possible images or media that I could use to present this, but I had to go straight to the source. We're on X at Devin Book, who was up in Sedona recently with a special pop-up for his collaboration with McDonald's and a release of the book 2. You see the 2 different color variants here. There was a pretty cool video. You could go watch it. It was posted by the McDonald's Twitter account, reposted by Devin Booker. It's on his page as well. But he's I'm pretty sure Devin Booker filmed it himself, but he has like his little hand camera and he's like going through the desert. It's kind of like a scary movie vibe to it, honestly. And then he comes across your boy Ronald McDonald here sitting on a bench up in the mountains in Sedona. And Ronald's got on the book twos in the all turquoise. Booker's got the I don't know what you would call that, like a tan taupe color with the turquoise accent. Yeah, this is a really cool collaboration. I know you and I were texting with our boy and Valley Sports Plug contributor Nico, who loves a brand collaboration and crossover. So I know he was super stoked on these. I don't know. I didn't obviously get my way up to Sedona to get a hand on these. It sounds like it was one of those limited release things. You're not going to be able to go, just on the Nike app and get it. I think it was on sneakers, but those are long gone by now. So try and get them on the resale market if you're interested. But Mike, what do you think of the Book 2 and McDonald's collaboration here?
I think it's creative. I just wonder about these kind of collaborations, if it is a brainchild of Devin Booker or not, or if it's something that Nike was like, hey, McDonald's is one of our bigger backing companies. Let's make sure that Devin Booker or somebody gets something with him. Because, we just saw the Jaw Threes do a collaboration with Jurassic Park. Jaw Threes as well did with Kool-Aid. There just seems to be consistent collaborations with some of these companies. But I want to say it definitely it came from the brainchild of Devin Booker and his team that works on the shoes over at Nike. Because once again, this is just a nod and a guy who is so invested in everything Arizona. He builds a pair of shoes around the only McDonald's that is not golden arches in the world because of the strict architectural requirements that are in Arizona, where everything has to be like a tan color, turquoise, and that kind of stuff. It's just this, if you're a sneakerhead, this is the kind of stuff that moves the needle because it is that true creativity that comes from it. Say if you don't like McDonald's or whatnot, it's a nod to Arizona once again. Like I joked about at the beginning of the stream, this guy just continues to immerse himself into the lore of Arizona, where it's going to be so hard to ever discredit him on what he's done for Arizona, the Phoenix Suns, the Valley, whatever you want to say about it. And look at that. Look at how cool that is. They did special cheeseburger boxes for the shoes. That's the creativity that gets me going when it comes down to shoes, man. I absolutely love it. I haven't gotten a pair yet. I don't know if I'm going to get a pair, Chris, because, you and I, we played ball on Monday because it was Memorial Day. And I was just talking about, I had a pretty decent slip in my Book 2s, the orange ones that I have. And it really is because of those translucent soles. If you play on dirty courts with them, that dirt sticks and you're slipping and sliding. Doesn't matter how many times you're swiping. And it's not just for the Book 2. It's for any shoes that have translucent soles. And this pair does. And the books that I'm buying now, I'm only buying to play in. You guys can see behind me, I have so many just walking around shoes. I'm not buying a pair of turquoise Book 2s just to walk around in. I already have 5 pairs of Book 1s. You know what I'm saying? I'll save my wallet and probably my fiance, her energy right now with not having to invest in these. But this is cool, man. The official pair that was released to the public was the pair that Book is wearing, the tan pair, and that all turquoise pair is technically a friends and family pair. So those are the super limited ones, probably only a couple of hundred. I know that they were selling those at this drop in Sedona, but like you said, for those, you're going to have to go on resale and they're probably going to be a decent penny. But I think those tan ones you can still find if you're looking for it. So this guy, man, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it.
That's perfect. No, I love it too, man. It's very unique. It's a unique color. And it's still I personally, I like the flashy colored shoes. I still like hooping in my university red Kyrie 7s. We all got some fun pairs of shoes, and that's where you're going to wear them. You're going to wear them on the court. Cause I'm hard pressed to believe that anyone's going to throw on a pair of all turquoise shoes and go out in their everyday life. Maybe if you got the right fit, maybe if you're going to a Diamondbacks game, this could be perfect even. But yeah, that's cool. I didn't know about that being the fans and friendly friends and family pair. My goodness. But yeah, those other ones are fresh too. And it was funny to me watching that video of him, that like teaser with him going through the desert. And, you know, obviously with the brand spanking new pair of shoes, tromping through the dirt, the red Sedona red dirt there. I just have to imagine that Book throws on a different pair of book 2s every single day, possibly even some book 1s. And he just, you know, signs them, gives them away, whatever. I don't know. But, yeah, Mike, I agree with you. Obviously, I only have the one pair of book 2s. I got the Spirit-Ons, which have the mesh, and I do like them. They're breathable, but they were rubbing my my heel a little bit weird, so I haven't played them in them again. But I think I need to bust them out maybe this next weekend or the weekend after, give them another shot, because I have heard a lot of good things. There's still people wearing the book 1s when we go out and hoop, and the book 2s are popular as well. So I like what he's doing here. And I do like the collaboration with McDonald's. I also love a good brand collab, if I'm being honest. So shout out Nico.
Yes, sir. Chris, yeah, bust out the Spirit-Ons again, man. Give them another try. The next time that a pair of book 2 doesn't have translucent soles and it's the rubber compound, I'm getting them because I need another pair of book 2s in the rotation. I've loved playing in them, man.
Definitely, most definitely, Mike. And hey, if you don't like the color, like the Spirit-Ons aren't bad, man. Spirit-Ons aren't bad.
Yeah, and they're not expensive. So
no, there you go.
I'm just waiting. I'll wait a couple months and then I'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Let it breathe, just like the Spirit-Ons. So we gotta move on. We got a few more here on the social swish that I wanted to get to. And so, you know, I like to bring some whoa, wrong button. I like to bring some fun, bring some levity on the social swish. And we go out to our friends pretty often on Reddit. You know, it's kind of all born out of our lovely, you know, local at Suns or r/Suns Reddit, and just how awesome and supportive they are of Valley Sports Plug and always have been. So I'm going to share this one. This is not from r/Suns. I think I might have one though, but this one is from, this is one of my favorites. It's r/NBA Circle Jerk. And this is user I Get Buckets. And the title is Valiant American Stops Aggressive German to Aid Allied French, Hitler Dead. And it's showing, for our audio only listeners, it's showing the and now famous block that Luke Cornett put on Isaiah Hartenstein at the end of Game 7 that helped secure the win for the Spurs, kind of making Luke Cornett a one play wonder. Also famously known for getting the wing promotion shut down in Atlanta, and the what was that? What's that gentleman's club called, Mike? You know this. You know this.
Oh my gosh, no, I didn't.
Magic City. There
with
go.
the lemon pepper Lou wings.
Yes. So Luke Cornett, man, what do you think of this World War II reference here?
I mean, I love the reference, absolutely, but it's funny now that he's gone from the player known so immensely as the guy who was jumping underneath the basket while guys are shooting 3-pointers just to get his hands up so guys couldn't see the basket, to now a bona fide play that really changed the tides of that game. Oklahoma City was pounding, coming back. Wemby had just went to the bench. And I think within this stint, Cornett played 2-3 minutes, and almost like you could say that this was the play of the game, because it was a 4-point swing. The Spurs go on a nice little run and then get back up double digits. You know, I had talked to you and texted you guys after the game in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals that going into the fourth quarter, even though the Spurs had a 3-point lead, I really had no idea who was going to win that game, because the Spurs had stretches and they had their runs. We know the game of basketball is a game of runs, but Shea was balling. He was getting to his spots. Cason Wallace was starting to come into his own, hitting huge threes. And it was really anybody's game. And then the Spurs started to separate themselves. And then here comes Luke Cornett making this big block on the guy that I was supposed to be his life coach. And once again, I didn't get him to the promised land, and Isaiah Hartenstein, who honestly, Chris, struggled pretty decently within that series as well. I was interested to see what kind of minutes he was going to get after they kind of transitioned him, and it just didn't work out. But The valiant American stops the aggressive German. What a headline, dude.
I'm saying, like, you gotta love the creativity of the Redditors out there. And it's interesting to me because you mentioned, we kind of talked about earlier, like Chet Holmgren, and you mentioned Isaiah Hartenstein there, the two bigs for the Thunder not showing up in the way they needed. And I wonder how much of that is the Wemby effect. But it's funny to me how many 7 foot or 7'1" players there are, but there's not a lot of like 7'4", 7'5", 7'6", which obviously, I mean, in your everyday life, how often are you coming across someone 7 foot plus, let alone making it to play professional basketball? And anyone who's 7 foot is always answering the question, what team do you play for? Do you play basketball? And then they have to say, oh, I played in high school, or no, I was in band. I don't know, whatever they say. But not every tall person plays basketball, guys.
I know, but the crazy thing though is, a lot of these 7-footers are still like decently athletic. Like, don't joke about it. Isaiah Hartenstein is an athletic guy. DeAndre Ayton, all these 7-footers. But when you start getting over 7'3", like you talk about I'll put Bol to the side because he had athleticism, but he was limited. But the Taco Falls or the Zach Edey's, like when those guys start getting over the 7'3" mark, they're just like slow and unathletic, man, and really have to focus on just dominating through their sheer size. That's what makes Wembanyama such a freak, because he can dribble from end to end. He can go off the dribble into pullback shots. He can shoot from outside. Like, once again, the NBA is in for a world of hurt as long as this guy stays healthy. But I love how they said aid the French too. That one
aided French, yeah.
Got me too.
There was another post in there that had Hitler dead also. I'm not 100% sure who they're referring to, if it's a singular player on the Thunder or just the Thunder as a whole. But I like the open, you can infer whatever you'd like. I do think that's an interesting point, Mike, about the big men, because we saw even just in the Final Four, or I guess maybe not the Final Four, in March Madness, just a few months back, in that kid from Florida, Oliver Rue, who's like 7'8", 7'9". You would think, like, man, you got a guy who's 7'9", you just throw him down there, you just tapping it in, just alley-oop every time. But he can't get back on defense. Like, he's slow as shit, and so they hardly played him. And he was, when you become more of a liability than anything else, like, how valuable are you? I think there's going to be plenty of teams that are willing to take a flyer on guys like that just because of their size and the potential. But I don't know. It's a cost benefit analysis or something like that. But Mike, we will move on to the next one. I think I got two more here potentially. We'll see how long this one goes, but this is from X and an account at Full Court Pass. There was a lot of different accounts that posted the same story via the Pat McAfee show. And it's a quote from Adam Silver from a couple weeks ago, last week, actually, where he said, even as I sit in the stands. Okay, wait, actually, I got to set this up. It says, Adam Silver says flopping in the NBA is not a pressing issue. And the quote here is, even as I sit in the stands at games, players may be falling down, players may be reacting to a call, but to me, if they're not fooling the referees, it's okay. Players are taught to sell calls these days. Mike, I think everyone knows at this point how I feel about NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. So I am going to take a step back here. And I just want to ask you how what you think about his quote here, and the middle part of that where he says, if they're not fooling the referees, it's okay. They are fooling the referees.
The real alien speaks. I mean, goodness, Chris, look at this picture of Adam Silver. Yikes. Sorry, that's a sidebar. I will say, down the stretch in that West Conference Finals, it depended on who the referee teams were. Like, if it was Scott Foster, he's known to call things a lot more tight. So any kind of small acts or pushes or anything like that are going to get called more often. But some of the other, official groups, they weren't taking the bait. So that is a positive. But if you're going to go this route in what Adam Silver says, it needs to be across the board. The referees need to call it exactly the same way. I know it's so hard because on the basketball floor, as a referee, you're running at the same pace or as close to it as the players are. And you're sometimes just not getting the right angles to see calls. That's why every time we see a replay, and it's, you can think back to Shea's flop on De'Aaron Fox, where he wasn't even touching his body, but the official is behind him. He can't see it. Those mistakes are going to be made. But I just don't think that it's right to basically discredit that nothing's happening and saying if they're not fooling the referees, it's okay. It's like there needs to be more research done by all of these on all of these calls to see what the percentage is on who's missing what. And if they're not on a balanced line, you need to address something better. What happened to the days where you got like fined for flopping or technical fouls? That used to be a thing. Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Why did that go away? Because it is egregious, and there are certain culprits that have really taken it out of hand. But yeah, they're taught to sell the calls. That's great. But when it becomes such a narrative from the fan base that people are starting to hate the product and hate the specific product, Oklahoma City Thunder, that's an issue, man. That's an overall issue, especially if that's one of the teams that you want to propel to the front of the NBA and push out to all of your markets as you continue to grow the game. So for him to sit on his hands, Chris, what's new? We're not surprised. It's going to take egregious acts before anything is really implemented. And that is tough to see, but at least the one thing has started. The Thunder have lost. So, Chris, you got your wish. Now we'll see what happens next.
And I think that's huge, honestly. The Thunder not advancing, not being rewarded for the way that they play. And it's the whole team. I know everyone wants to spotlight Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And for my money, and I've heard other people share this sentiment, and I totally agree with it. He is a good player. Like, there's no denying it. He is a really good player, but he's too good to be acting like that. And I think when you do it enough, and as he does it every single night, 82 games a season, and then 15 more in the playoffs or whatever, it becomes second nature. And I don't think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander even realizes that he's doing it at this point. I think he just is in the moment and reacting, and that's what he's muscle memory trained himself to do. So it goes to the extent where when people see it be rewarded and people start selling it, I'm sure to some extent they in the offseason they work on selling calls and selling contact. It has a trickle down effect to the lower levels when you're talking about college, high school, middle school, just kids in general growing up are going to see that play style and adopt it. I saw a post on one of the social medias where it was like a high school game, and it was like there's like 3 seconds left on the clock. Kid pump fakes. The player gets off his feet, he leans into it and does the force contact, gets the call with 1.8 seconds left on the clock, hits 2 of the 3 free throws, and they win the game. And so it's like that type of thing. I mean, that's not on SGA. We've seen James Harden do it. We've seen all sorts of players do it. It's not been a new thing just recently in the past couple of years, but it's been highlighted so heavily because of the success of the Thunder. And I agree with you 100%. The refs need to figure it out, come together, and decide how they're going to officiate this. And it is bang bang plays. We have the benefit of the doubt of watching the instant replay on the broadcast and then seeing the clips and dissecting it, doing the Monday morning quarterback thing. But I mean, there's some pretty obvious indicators that a player might be trying to sell a call or be straight out flopping by like the overexpressive like head cocks, the flailing of the arms, just the like diving on the ground like a freaking swan. Like, I don't know, man. There's got to be something, and I can somewhat. I'd hate to give him an out. I'd hate to even give him the slightest benefit of the doubt here. But Adam Silver is the commissioner of the NBA, and he is walking a fine line of trying to please everyone, from the owners to the players to the officials to the fans, and he can't please us all. He can't please everybody involved. So he's got to keep the refs happy, got to keep the players happy, and whether you like it or not, the fans don't come first. Always. They really don't. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe the fans should come first. But at the end of the day, it's more about the almighty dollar. And as long as they're not seeing the revenue drop or the viewership drop, like you said earlier, this was the highest viewed playoffs in history. he's not going to put too much energy in trying to solve this issue until it starts to become detrimental to the pocketbook.
That's great. Take this picture down. I can't keep looking at this. This is just too scary.
Yeah. Let me step off my soapbox here.
No, but you bring up a great point, man. You know, those infamous words, those are going to be, if the legacy goes down of Adam Silver when he was asked about all the streaming services. Chris, I love this playoffs, but watching this playoffs was a disaster with the amount. Amazon Prime over here, NBA on NBC. Now the finals is all on ABC. Thank goodness it's on a network that you don't have to pay extra for, because then there were other games. It was just on Peacock. And I'm like, well, I have NBC. I can't watch the game. I'm like, what are we doing? And his infamous words of calling it a highlight sport can be that to a certain extent. But man, I thought we were trying to grow the game to as many people who wanted to be interested in it. And like you said, the numbers speak for itself. It's been positive. It's going in the right direction. So until the negatives come with it, aka people stop watching the product, you're going to continue to have it. But I still think the NBA just thrives off of the discussion, man. It's kind of the same as the NFL. The NFL has become a year-round league with all of the talks and all of the craziness. Myles Garrett getting traded in June. You know, like, the NBA just wants to be talked about, whether it's positive or negative. So as long as the eyeballs continue to stay on the product, you're going to continue to have these things until drastic measures happen or are taken, whether it's by the players or by injuries to their stars from being foul baiters. We'll see. But I thought that was a great point. I just had to throw my 2 cents in. But it sounds like you got one more, Chris. What do you got for us?
Yeah, Mike, and I think this will be a perfect way to pun fully intended, bookend the social swish here. I got one last one. This is from our good friends over at r/sun. So had to end with our old friends, and this is user Fifth Night of Gwyn. And he has a little tag on his post that says, in an abusive relationship with the Phoenix Suns. And the title of this is Elimination Game Stat Posters Are Real Quiet These Days, with questioning face emoji. And it shows here on the graphic this template of a woman in the office who is kind of gushing over Anthony Edwards and Cade Cunningham here. And it shows their stats, 24-2 on 9 of 26 field goals, 13-5 on 5 of 16 field goals in elimination games. And the woman doting on them is said, get them some help. And then below that, in the next frame, you have Devin Booker, 24-6 on 8 of 16 field goal in elimination game. And she's on the phone with HR, and it says, washed, Suns should trade him. So clearly the comparison here is that Booker putting up similar, if not better numbers than Kat and Cade in elimination games, but not receiving the same amount of love. Instead of saying that Devin Booker should get some help, they're saying that the Suns should trade him outright. Mike, what do you think of this graphic here?
I got a couple of thoughts on this. So I think a lot of this can come down to personality. So when you think of Anthony Edwards, you start to think of another guy who is becoming the face of the NBA. He's very charismatic. He's outspoken. Sometimes he's crazy, but he's a hell of a baller. So I think everybody is always going to make the excuses for him. And he's a younger guy to state, hey, get him some help. He's a superstar. There's nothing. He's doing what he can, right? And I think Cade kind of comes down into that, the shiny new toy situation. Former number 1 overall pick, has a stellar year, punctures his lung, was on the short list for the NBA MVP, honestly, this year. And then kind of his team struggles through the playoffs, but he had a decent playoffs, and he had an absolutely great year. I can't remember what team All NBA. I think he was second team All NBA. But it's like this was his first foray into the playoffs. So people are going to look at the factor of get him some help. This was his first time. He can't do it all alone. People are going to look at Devin Booker now as he has been in the league for more than a decade, as somebody who had his opportunities, was given the outlets, and he just didn't get it done, even though he was technically 2 games away from being an NBA champion. And he's had some other great runs as well. But, you know, I think it also factors into the viewpoint of the Valley as a whole and the market on a national stage. I just don't think a lot of people out there, especially on the major syndicated shows, Chris, really like us and just like Arizona, which is crazy because how many of them come to Arizona and probably have a great time? Like it is a destination for vacationers, for people who are doing bachelor parties, want to do a golf trip and everything in between, like why wouldn't you like the market that goes with us? It's not like the bad narratives that went along with the Phoenix Suns, aka Robert Sarver, are still around. Like Matt Ishbia in circles, even though he is crazy and charismatic to his own extent, as well as I think very respected within what he's done to start his tenure as the owner of the Phoenix Suns. But when it comes down to Devin Booker, I think he's too quiet, and that rubs people the wrong way because, man, people like their superstars a little boisterous. They like them a little brash, really showing their hands and being just a different entity than that everyday guy. And let's not get it twisted. Devin Booker kind of prides himself on being that everyday guy. He goes through the motions, but he's dedicated to his craft. He puts in his time and effort, but then he's just like all of us. We have the things that we like to do. He's a cars guy, he's starting to do more golf, and he has his hobbies and that kind of stuff. And he keeps to himself and keeps his circle small and doesn't get in trouble in the limelight. And he's just not that flashy. So if you're not doing everything, you're washed. And that's just been the story of Devin Booker right now. And man, if you put Anthony Edwards on the Phoenix Suns this year, it would have been the same scenario. Same with Cade Cunningham. So that's just going to be the eras of the NBA and how it always goes, Chris. But I still think, man, there's some kind of vendetta to Arizona. I just don't get it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's puzzling to me. And I mean, obviously we just had a whole, discussion on the state of the fandom during Heat Check episode 50. So go check that out if you haven't. We touch on kind of somewhat in this similar vein. But yeah, there's something about Arizona that doesn't resonate with the rest of the sports fandom in this country. And yeah, great place to visit. Apparently everyone has a relative in Arizona, but you can't root for the teams. Even if you've lived here for a decade, you're still going to root for your Lakers or your Knicks or your Spurs or your Mavericks or whoever, wherever you came from, wherever your family came from. It'll always be the Suns being team B, if we're lucky enough to even have you consider the Suns being your team B. And that's another crazy thing is like the Suns are the longest tenured sports franchise of the big four sports in Arizona. And they've had a longer time to establish their fan base, but yet we still don't see quite, I think, the level of love that we appreciate. And as you were talking there, Mike, and bringing up that point, I kind of think about if you ever look at like a population density map of the United States, like I don't know the percentage, but most people live east of the Mississippi, and then it kind of thins out as you head west. So it makes sense geographically that there are going to be more Timberwolves fans and Pistons fans and Knicks fans, and all these East Coast teams are going to have more fans. And of course, Lakers have a global appeal. The Spurs with their success brings fans as well. Same with the Mavericks. So the Suns, unfortunately, although we have made a couple finals, we were in the finals recently, have had some good teams. They just haven't really been able to put their name on the map. And I think, winning a championship, I think would go a long way. But as we've said, I don't know how close we are to that. I'd like to think Devin Booker could be on a championship contending team before it's all said and done, but I also find that hard to believe. So yeah, looks nonchalant, low key guy that stays out of trouble, like you said. And that's not necessarily going to be conducive to gaining a lot of fans. Cause even like with the last topic, and we're talking about Adam Silver, there's no such thing as bad press, good or bad. If you're in the news, if your name's getting out there, if you're getting stories written about you, if you're having conversations about you, you're going to be more in the spotlight, and people are going to formulate an opinion, whether positive or negative. And I don't know, people, there's just something about, it might be a global phenomenon. It might just be a human thing, but like people love to pick a side, but no matter what it is, whether it's politics or sports teams, people love to pick a side and, duke it out, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I thought that one was interesting. Just but get no love despite the signature shoe, despite the success and the accolades, and being just a good guy. He's a good guy. But Mike, that was a social swish.
Thank you, Chris. We will still continue to embrace our boy Devin Booker. We can't wait to see where the Phoenix Suns go this next season. And as the offseason rolls along for those teams that are not in the NBA Finals, which is damn near every one of them. But Chris, thank you once again. And you know that means it's time that we head into the outlet point guard. And I figured it was smart to talk about somebody that played for one of the teams in the NBA Finals. But this guy actually played for both of them at one point in his career. Man, this is also another player who spent time in the Valley, and I actually was the ball boy for during his time on the 06-07 Phoenix Suns. So I had some fun with this guy, and I'm talking about Kurt Thomas, who, like I said, I don't think a lot of people know is truly the man of many nicknames. Here's just a couple of them, Chris. Midlife, he got that name from Carmelo Anthony when he went back to New York at the end of his career, basically to talk about how he was the veteran presence. He was, I don't know if it was more so on the midlife crisis aspect, but we'll have to ask Carmelo about that. But he was also called Crazy Eyes, Dirty Kurt, Tank, KT, one of my favorites, Big Sexy, which was a fan favorite nickname of him during his time with the Chicago Bulls. But I called him the Big Kurt because there is another very famous professional athlete, I will say, in Frank Thomas, who I absolutely loved, who played for the Chicago White Sox, who went by the Big Hurt. And since they both had the same last name, I was like, we'll just throw Kurt in there. We'll do that. But Kurt Thomas was a 6'9", 240-pound forward. He was the 10th overall pick in the 1995 NBA draft. And oh my goodness, Chris, talk about a journey. 18 seasons in the NBA for 9 different teams, including, like I said, the New York Knicks, San Antonio Spurs, and the Phoenix Suns. But he grew up in Dallas, where he attended Hillcrest High School, then played his college ball at Texas Christian University, where during the 1994-1995 season, he led Division I NCAA basketball in scoring and rebounding with some gaudy numbers, 28.9 points per game, 14.6 rebounds per game, becoming only the 3rd player in history to accomplish that feat. But when he was drafted by the Miami Heat, he started there for about 3 seasons, spent a year with the Dallas Mavericks, then truly had his coming out party with the New York Knicks from 1999 to 2005, where he was a part of that 1999 New York Knicks team that made the NBA Finals. But for us here in the Valley, in June of 2005, the Phoenix Suns acquired Kurt Thomas in exchange for one of my favorites, Quentin Richardson, and technically the draft rights for Nate Robinson. So did we win that trade? I don't know. But Kurt provided vital interior defense, toughness, and rebounding for the 7 seconds or less Suns, contributing to another Western Conference Finals appearance in 2006. But his time in the Valley, like we said, was short-lived. He was a man on the move. He was traded to Seattle and then really just kind of bounced around for the final years of his career as a veteran journeyman, finishing his career back in New York and retiring after the 2012-2013 season. He averaged 8.1 points and 6.6 rebounds in 1,110 regular season games over his 18 years. It's Kurt Thomas, man. I have some fond memories of Kurt, man. He always was a pleasure to be around when I was a ball boy. But Chris, when you think of Kurt Thomas, what are some of the things you think about?
Man, Kurt Thomas. I always remembered his nickname as Dirty Kurt. Of course, my fondest memories of him are all as a Phoenix Sun. Basically all I knew him for at the young age I was during his playing time. But just being a solid backup to Amari Stoudemire. I remember the first season he was here, it was him and Tim Thomas. So it was like the 2 Thomas. Which Thomas is it? On the TV quality back then, it wasn't always super easy to tell, for me being young and also kind of dumb. But I liked Kurt Thomas. Obviously, Tim could shoot a little bit better. Kurt was a little more of a inside guy. But yeah, a solid backup. Like I remember he would come in, he could board, he could play defense. You didn't really need him to score. Just quick sidebar that you mentioned Quentin Richardson. Like I remember him being on this team for longer, but clearly my memory is not that great. But one of the things that's kind of drilled in my head of that is it was after the Suns were eliminated and they were walking in the tunnel, and I'm pretty sure they were walking in the tunnel, but they were asking Joe Johnson on if he would be coming back. And Quentin Richardson put his arm around Joe Johnson. He was like, of course he's coming back. Of course he's coming back. And then they traded Quentin Richardson. So I don't think either of them came back for the next season after that. But it's funny how those things go. But Kurt was a good role player here in Phoenix, and clearly just a good role player throughout his career to have such longevity for a guy who doesn't really have gaudy numbers. I think his career high points per game I saw here was like 14 was the most points per game in a season he ever had. And that was during his time with the Knicks, 02-03. So just a reliable guy. And I think that goes a long way. You know, Tallman always says availability is one of the best qualities. So is knowing your role, knowing how to play it. There's plenty of guys in this league like that. And clearly Kurt Thomas was one of them to find himself so valuable for so many teams.
Yeah, I absolutely loved him in his time here in the Valley, Chris. And I was so worried, like you talked about, when Joe Johnson signed with the Atlanta Hawks because the Suns famously didn't want to give him any money. And they traded Q to New York for Kurt. I was wondering how it was going to work, but we had also added in Boris Diaw. Raja Bell had taken over in the shooting guard spot, who I think a lot of people would say was an overall better shooter than Quentin Richardson. But Kurt started. He did have times where he would back up Amari as well. He was just that in the trenches type of guy who had a solid 18 to 24 foot jumper as well. I mean, just a quintessential guy that just makes sense why he lasted in the league for so long, because he could do the little things very well. He stepped up when was needed, and he was a big body that never backed down from the fight. I mean, you talked about there were plenty of times he was matched up with Tim Duncan, who a lot of people called the greatest power forward of all time. And Tim had his ways, but sometimes Kurt did more so on the defensive end. Kurt wasn't putting up crazy amounts of points, but I was very fond, obviously, of those 7 seconds or less eras. That 06-07 team was so much fun as well. Unfortunately, I had the gap year from 04. I was a ball boy 04-05. Then they changed the age limit because I was 14 years old. So you had to be 16, which is a state law. I don't know how I ever got the job the first time. But, when he came onto the team and they went up against the Dallas Mavericks, I thought they were so close. And we know that's been the story of Arizona sports. But Kurt Thomas, man, I think technically, Chris, that's the first guy who was like an actual Phoenix Sun that we've done on the outlet point guard who played for multiple seasons. Am I wrong? Am I misremembering that? I feel like that's true. He might be one of the first guys. So we haven't done Amari. We haven't done Steve. We've talked about all those guys, but for the outlet point guard, I think this is maybe kind of one of the first guys that's really played for the Suns for multiple years and has had, he was a big part of those teams for sure. I have his bobblehead, man. That was back when they would do the starting 5 teams bobbleheads. So I still got the whole set with Kurt in the starting lineup. And there he is right there. But this is the card that we had signed for today. It's a 2004 Fleer Tradition from his last season with the New York Knicks. At that point, he had played 80-plus games in 3+ seasons, averaged about 13 points. So he really made his name with the New York Knicks. And I'm sure a lot of Knicks fans were sad to see him go when he was traded to the Suns, especially with, kind of the era of Quentin Richardson, Amari. I think it was short-lived. They didn't get where they wanted to go. But Kurt fit his role here perfectly, and I'll always think fond of him. So any other last memories, any thoughts on, what did you say? Dirty Kurt?
Dirty Kurt.
That was your favorite one? All right. I like that one too.
Just consistent. Like I do look back on those eras fondly. That's obviously those 7 seconds or less Suns teams that he was a crucial part of were basically defining, life altering for me, because that's really what I was already playing basketball to some extent as like a kid, but like watching and being a fan and like trying to emulate players, and just my overall love for the game of basketball was cemented from those teams. So I think I make them bigger than they might have been, and I really like core memories for me. So Kurt, to be a part of that, I think you're right, Mike. This might be the first time like a Suns player that had an extended run here we've done, and very fond of those teams. And I like me some Kurt Thomas.
The big sexy. I didn't remember that one from his time in Chicago.
I like the big Kurt though. That's clever.
The big
That's
Kurt.
clever.
I thought it was clever too at the time. Obviously, that was like my own personal nickname for him when I was on the court rebounding for him. But Kurt Thomas, a legend for me, legend for Chris. It sounds too. There's guys that we always will hold close to our heart, even though he was here for a short amount of time. I thought it was only right since the New York Knicks are in the NBA Finals. And I couldn't do back-to-back Spurs, guys, because like I've talked about the Spurs enough. We did Tim Duncan last month. I wasn't going to go down that route, even though there were some good guys that I think I got a Sean Elliott card, Avery Johnson. The one guy that always escaped me was David Robinson, because I think when I started getting autographs was just right after he retired. And man, all those Spurs teams would sign anything. That's why it was always still so hard to hate them. But anyways, Chris, thank you for taking a trip down memory lane on the outlet point guard. And I think that's it, Chris. That's the end of episode 39. So I'll pass it over to you one more time so you can let the people know what's going on, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, man, this was a good one. I really enjoyed getting into the finals, the shoe talk. I tried to go on to the Li-Ning website to see about buying some shoes, and it's really hard to navigate. So Steph, not off to a great start. Obviously, he doesn't have any shoes available yet, but it looks like they have an Amazon storefront. I was eventually able to find them, but curious to see how that all shapes up. Also curious to see how the finals ends up playing out. And I hope it's 7 games. I want to see some good basketball. Honestly, I know I said I don't want the Spurs to win, but at the end of the day, I honestly don't care who wins. I just want to see some good competitive basketball games. No more blowouts. Let's have some close games. Let's get a buzzer beater or 2 in there, and look forward to talking about this and breaking down the end of the season on the next episode. But Mike, always a pleasure. Never a chore.
Appreciate you, Chris. We need another 7-game series. I need it. Inject it into my veins. This was the matchup that I was honestly hoping for. I cannot wait to see these two duke it out, man. And to see the energy that's going to be in Madison Square Garden is going to be cinema, pure cinema. But we appreciate everybody who has made it to the end of the stream, stuck with us the whole night. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Valley Sports Plug. Make sure you follow us at AZ_VSP on all socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. And if you missed the stream or you missed any of our other streams and you want the audio version, you can find it on all streaming platforms. But until next time, I'm Michael Benjamin. That's Chris Patrick. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.